Byanyima, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you, Stephen.
We, on this program, have talked to quite a number of top officials, big bosses of international NGOs. You are different from most because of your backstory. Do you feel somewhat different from your peers in this world?
A little bit, not completely. I feel different because there are few heads. Maybe I'm the first head of a global organization from Africa, from the South, and who is a woman, combining all those three. So yes, I feel sometimes a bit different, but generally feel the same with my peers because we're all passionate, we share the same values, and we fight the same causes.
Well, I'm very interested you pick that word fight, because it seems to me your life, perhaps more than most of your peers, has been defined by this notion of struggle and fight, sometimes in the most literal sense, because you did spend a couple of years in the Ugandan bush with Yoweri Museveni and others fighting against the dictatorship in Uganda. So for you, this idea of struggle does seem to be very, very real.
It is. I grew up in a crisis country under a dictatorship, the brutal dictatorship of Amin. I saw repression. I fled. I became a refugee. I joined a struggle against dictatorship. So yes, my life is shaped by struggle, by a passion that I developed for human rights, for equality, for women's rights. And this is my natural home, working in social justice movements.
Do you feel yourself to be radical almost to the point of being a revolutionary?
Revolution is something I was involved in when I was in my 20s, but I see myself really as a practical, pragmatic champion of human rights and social justice. And that's what Oxfam is. So it's a perfect home for me.
Well, I wonder, it's interesting you say that, because to many people here in the UK, for example, we associate Oxfam with the word charity. You know, because Oxfam runs what are called charity shops, where you can go and donate to clothing and other things, and they can be then sold on to give you funds for your aid and humanitarian work. But charity, perhaps, isn't a word that is associated with politicization, with struggle, with radicalism. Is it an easy marriage?
Actually, it is very interesting, because behind that word, charity, is a very radical idea that humanity is one and that injustice must be challenged and fought. We trace our roots to very radical Quakers, Oxford professors who challenged Winston Churchill, the great prime minister, on the war that was going on, and who wanted to take aid, food aid, across to the people who were starving on the Hitler side. And they challenged, and we've been challenging since. We challenge power.
Interesting, because in recent times you've appeared to sort of rail against the notion of charity given by the rich to the poor. You said this not so long ago. You said, we don't think charity is the way to solve these problems. You're not going to lift everybody out of poverty through the kindness of wealthy people. Is charity outmoded to a certain extent?
No, charity is never outmoded. The spirit of solidarity and kindness, of sharing, is what drives what we do. But what I was saying is that Oxfam tackles the root causes of poverty, and that lies in powerlessness. So we challenge political leaders, economic leaders, business leaders to do justice for the poor, not to give them handouts, but to do justice.
Your version of justice, sometimes it does tread into very controversial political territory. I mean, if I look at some of the campaigns that you and Oxfam have run, you've run campaigns for fair taxation, you've run campaigns on the minimum wage. You know, these, in the British political context, have certain political connotations which, it has to be said at times, have got Oxfam into trouble. For example, in December 2014, the Charity Commission decided that some of Oxfam's tweeting had actually carried a political bias.
Yeah, sometimes we are dragged before authorities and told that we are trying to cross a line, but we are political. We are political with a small p. We are not partisan political, but we are political because we tackle where powerlessness starts and where power is abused. So we tackle governments and we tackle companies. Among the examples you gave, you should have mentioned that we faced off companies, pharmaceutical companies, to bring down the price of antiretrovirals to save the lives of millions of people who are dying. So this needs a challenge.